my name is Tina, and welcome to my Genshin channel. I was pretty busy this last week exploring Notcry, and I'm not even close to clearing my quest log, but I thought it is finally time to make a video about none others than the 5 sinners of KHAENRI'AH. Enough time has passed that it's not really a spoiler anymore, even if Act 1 and Act 2 of the Archon quest took me 9 and 7 hours to finish respectively. So let's jump right into the topic with the brand new information we got about Rerir, Rächer of Solnari, or the Moon Hunter in other languages. But before that, in case you forgot, the sinners were first mentioned by name during the bedtime story quest. I will go through all of them one by one, but TLDR, Dawnslave gathered 4 great minds from KHAENRI'AH to stop Irmin from toying with abyssal power, as well as to save his own brother who has been imprisoned. However, the plan went south when those 4, together with Dane's brother, instead of standing up to Irmin, used unlimited abyssal power to become transcendent beings. We also know that it was the Abyss sibling used as a vessel for such power, and this is also how Dane and the Abyss sibling met. However, these 5 abyssal transcendent beings didn't stay for the cataclysm, they fled KHAENRI'AH, and this is why Dane has such a grudge against them. The sinners will definitely play a big part in Genshin's main story, since while we don't know about the other chapters from the mysterious book The Pale Princess and the 6 Pygmies, given the volume's descriptions, it's likely about the twins, Dawnslave and the sinners. And now that we know of the sinners and how they became so powerful, let's dive into Rerir, because we did get some interesting new information about not just him, but all sinners. Rerir was the leader of the Wild Hunt, but at one point he fell into the moon's reflection that ended up destroying his body, and it got scattered around Notcry. With time and will, he was able to slowly merge those fragments back together, with only his heart missing that Flynn's yawing the way. But we are not here for a story recap. I certainly hope that you've already completed this quest. We are here, first of all, for one specific moment, Rerir's own introduction. It's not only the Harbingers anymore who are getting one, but seemingly also the sinners? I guess the Vedrfolnir got kind of snubbed then, like he was the first one we've seen, and even Surtalogi appeared in memories beforehand, but to be fair, Rerir was the only one in his real form, with his title being Blasphemy Against Death, and this is what I want to talk about. We've already known that the sinners have connections to the Shades and the Heavenly Principles through their own slate weapon skins, but this is the first time we found out what this connection exactly was. It seems like each sinner represents a blasphemy against Tivet's laws. And this is something I talked about previously, even before the Shades video. We kind of knew about them from the artifact types, which ended up being the Shades names word by word in both Chinese and Japanese. I will go through all of those, explaining why it could be, but since we are at Rerir, let's start with that, the one confirmed so far. He sinned against the ruler of death, Ronova. Now, I know, technically no KHAENRI'AH could die, so Rerir being immortal might not sound that crazy, but the fact that his body was scattered around Notcry and he was able to still restore himself into somewhat of a human form without any corrosion, albeit no heart, has to be the reason his sin revolves around death. This is exactly what we get from the weapon skin too, him wielding a polearm called Barnstalker, which is, like many other things in Notcry, comes from Norse mythology. The folklore says Barnstork is a tree which was struck with a sword during a banquet by the one-eyed Odin. There could be many one-eyed characters, even the name Odin could have a lot of different interpretations. Do not read too much into it, and I will come back to this at the end. Just worth to note, because mythology definitely gave us some hints before. For example, how in Commedia dell'arte, Sandrone's spouse is called Pulonia, just like Genshin's Sandrone's robot. But if we are here, you might have read online that the name mentioned by Rerir, Tolindis, would be his wife as well. That is not true, unfortunately. I mean, it still could be his wife, but there are no mentions of any Tolindis in mythology, so that is kind of fake news. The mythology behind these names are not that important for now, but still, I think this newfound discovery about the sinner's blasphemy will be pretty important for the future. And with that, let's move on to another sinner who we also know quite a lot about, and her blasphemy being pretty obvious, that being Rhinedottir, also known as Gold. One of the witches from the Hexen Circle. We heard so much about her, and we've even seen her in the Shades video, since she literally merged with the ruler of life, Nabirius. Once again, from the weapon skins, we know that she wields a sword called Lochsism, something like that, and it's pretty obvious why she would have the title Blasphemy Against Life. Being a chemist, she created multiple life forms, obviously Albedo, Durin, and even the Bakunava being among them. And if all this wasn't enough sin against life, as we know, she also devoured the heart of Nabirius. So even without the weapon, it's pretty obvious that she has the blasphemy against life. Given the fact that Alyssa and Nicole, her old witch friends, Albedo and Durin, both her sons, and even a fellow sinner, Rerir, all of them are in Outcry. I think it's safe to assume we will see her in-game very soon. And finally, I just have to mention once again the very sauce line about Piero being her old acquaintance, but more about that later. Another sinner we know quite a lot about is Skirk's master, Surtalogi the Foul. Again, looking at the Veil weapon skins, he actually wields a bow called Hroptatyr. Despite the fact that in all depictions of him we have seen a big claymore, I guess it could still be him using a bow to practice with that. It would be a funny connection to Tartaglia if that's the case. Hroptatyr is also from Old Norse mythology, which were the magical arrows of Odr, but again, not much to guess from just the name yet. However, as for Surtalogi's skin, it's pretty obvious too, but the weapon skin confirms his title being Blasphemy Against Void, or could be Space too. These two are used in English somewhat interchangeably, but in Chinese and Japanese these are all the same. From other Hoyo games, Kiana being the Herrscher of Void, Asmodai being the Ruler of Space, and the artifact type being Iono Team, but these are all the same in Chinese and Japanese, referring to the exact same thing. And the Blasphemy Against Void or Space, whatever it may be, also makes a lot of sense since Surtalogi is known to open up the fake sky and summon people into Tibet. He brought Skirk there, and he himself is just freely traveling in and out of Tibet, not caring about Asmodai's fake sky. And as I'm saying this, there's another layer to these blasphemies. With all sinners wanting some kind of perfection, they basically want to go above the fakeness that Celestia shows to people. With Rerir wanting to go beyond the fake moon to see the real moon. With Rhinedottir wanting to create her own real life. And Surtalogi wanting to go beyond the fake sky to see the real sky. Nonetheless, he's for sure at odds with Celestia because of that, and while I'm not sure if we would actually meet him in person this past cycle, I mean he's traveling the universe after all, eventually he will surely come back when Skirk will be ready to fight. And moving on, another sinner we know quite a bit about is Vedrfolnir, the Visionary, also known as Dawnslave's brother. He got blinded in both eyes due to his prophecies, which even Surtalogi stated were never wrong. The Traveler suspects him of making the stone tablets too about the prophecy of Fountain, and because of his prophecies it's also pretty obvious his title being Blasphemy Against Time. He wielded a catalyst called Gleipnir, which again is from Norse mythology and is actually somewhat known in the mainstream. This is a very strong binding that holds all sorts of things together, originally the wolf Fenrir. It's said that Gleipnir is so strong that it would hold this wolf until the Ragnarok, but after that Fenrir would devour Odin. So again, we are not sure how far these namings go and how far related they are to the source material. Back to Vedrfolnir though, we know that he was imprisoned by KHAENRI'AH and Downslave recruited the first 4 sinners to save him. We don't know what happened exactly, but he definitely rather joined the 4 sinners and gain abyssal power. He was also the one giving Downslave his ring that resets his curse, which is pretty much in line with his blasphemy against time. It was after the cataclysm that he asked Surtalogi to bring someone from outside Tibet, who ended up being Skirk, and we know it was sometime after when the Abyss sibling found him already in his crystal form alongside Clotter, and it was his abyssal power that made Clotter later establishing the Abyss Order, which the Abyss sibling became the leader of as well. Given the fact he appeared in a crystal form during a past memory, I'm not entirely sure if we would see him soon, but potentially in a flashback. Maybe it's also possible we will get his introduction to that we were snubbed from. But that leaves us with one more sinner who we still know close to nothing about, who is likely going to be the most important one, as Hroptatyr, the Wise, would be the blasphemy against reason. And reason, in both Chinese and Japanese, is exactly the heavenly principles. Now, let's dive into the Norse mythology once again, because as I said, we will come back to Odin, and Hroptatyr is actually one of Odin's names, meaning sage. Odin is the center of all folklore, and I talked about it already in many of the previous sinners' backgrounds, he appeared as well. However, in Genshin, Hroptatyr wields a claymore called Starkutter, which is a name that is not exactly known in mythology. There are some close ones, but Starkutter exactly is nowhere to be found, so I don't think it's worth to start guessing on that. And honestly, same goes for Odin himself, because he's known for so many different names, all meaning different things. So let's try guessing on that. I will pre-emphasize the theory part of this video, saying that Hroptatyr will likely be an entirely new character. Hroptatyr is his name, so it's safe to assume if we have already met him, Hroptatyr would be how we're introduced to him. From all the known characters, no one really fits his character and story, only if we are twisting it a little bit. Going back to the shades video and Rhinedottir calling Piero an old acquaintance of hers made a lot of theories about Piero being Hroptatyr. Before I talk about some ways it could be true, worth to know that Piero is heavily against using abyssal power, so it would be unlikely to imagine him as a sinner, but all sinners at the start were against Irmin's plan, so technically a twist in which he did falter for a second, became a sinner, then quickly realized how bad it was, then never used it again, could be true. And for the Pieroist Hroptatyr crowd, he does have only one eye shown, like Odin, and besides Hroptatyr, one of Odin's many names is also masked, like Piero's mask, and he was always somewhat against Irmin since he was not smart enough for him. People always point out how Dawnslave gathered the best of the best for his mission, while Piero talks about how he was not comparable to the stages of KHAENRI'AH, but also that is just him speaking about himself. If he wants to forget about the past or even hide it, the story could make him Hroptatyr. There are no definitive contradictions. Piero also talked about his plan to kill the Heavenly Principles, which definitely would be a blasphemy against them, but I'd imagine he's not alone with that wish. More so, Hroptatyr being the wise and Piero naming himself the Jester would also play into this possible theory of him trying to forget, trying to hide this part of his past, and it kind of goes against reason as well. But again, Odin is appearing in a lot of places. He even has connections to Irmin from Norse mythology, and actually that's where the word Irmin's soul comes from, being the great killer. So while there has to be something among all these characters, I think what's most likely is that they are all separate but closely connected. Hroptatyr's lack of information, I think, suggests a new character we just haven't heard of yet, and because of his blasphemy, he definitely will be in the center of the story very soon. And that's about everything we know of the 5 sinners of KHAENRI'AH. Tensions are getting high in the story. We can even expect Varka to show up during Luna 2 with him catching up to Rerir, and it's also possible we will even get a sinner animation like we got with the Shades. Nonetheless, I hope this little summary was fun, and as per usual, if I missed anything or if you have any questions, make sure to leave a comment. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give a like, and if you want to see more content like this, then make sure to subscribe. I was Sino Genshin channel, and see you in the next one. Bye bye!